The video was only 60 seconds long. 60 seconds that had been viewed 17 million times. 60 seconds that cost me my career, my reputation, and every relationship I'd spent 2 decades building. 60 seconds filmed by the one person in the world I trusted more than anyone else. My son. His face filled the screen, eyes red, voice shaking, sitting in his bedroom with that guitar in the background. And he told the world a story. A story about me. About what kind of father I really was. About the choice I made that he said proved I didn't care about his mother anymore. The comments flooded in within minutes. Thousands of them. Then tens of thousands. All saying the same thing. I was a monster. The worst kind of human being. Someone who deserved everything coming to me. By the next morning, the video had 2 million views. By that evening, 8 million. News outlets picked it up. My face became a meme. Strangers on the internet who'd never met me, who knew nothing about my life beyond those 60 seconds, decided they knew exactly who I was. My phone exploded with messages. My job put me on leave. People I'd known for years stopped answering my calls. And my son, the kid I'd raised, the one who used to call me his hero, wouldn't speak to me. The video made him famous. It made me infamous. But here's what those 17 million people didn't know. Here's what my son didn't tell them while the sad piano music played in the background. The truth was so much more complicated than 60 seconds could ever show. Because yes, I made mistakes. Terrible ones. The kind that crack families apart and leave scars that never fully heal. But what my son did, what he planned, what he orchestrated, what he turned our family into, that was something else entirely. This isn't a story about a viral video. This is a story about betrayal. About how the people closest to you can use your worst moments as weapons. About how a father and son can destroy each other and both believe they're the hero of the story. And it's about the one thing Marcus never revealed in that video. The one piece of information that changed everything I thought I knew about what he'd done and why he'd done it. By the time I discovered the truth, it was already too late to stop what was coming. So let me take you back to where it really started. Not to the day he posted the video. Not to the moment he pressed record. But to the night my world first began to crack open. The night I came home early and found my wife in our bedroom with someone else. That was the beginning. The moment when everything I thought I knew about my family turned out to be a lie. I just didn't realize yet that the biggest lie was still ahead of me. And it would come from the one person I never saw coming. Let me take you back to the beginning, to when things were still good. When I still believed I was one of the lucky ones. I met my wife, Jennifer, when we were both 23. She was a paralegal at the firm where I'd just started as a junior accountant. I was the guy who stayed late, who volunteered for the projects no one wanted, who believed hard work was the secret to everything. Jennifer was the opposite, spontaneous, creative, the kind of person who believed life was meant to be experienced, not scheduled. We balanced each other perfectly, or so I thought. We got married at 25. Our son, Marcus, came along 2 years later. I still remember the night Jennifer told me she was pregnant. We were in our tiny apartment, eating takeout Chinese food on the couch, and she just blurted it out between bites of lo mein. I dropped my fork. I actually dropped it right into the container and sat there staring at her, and then I started crying. Happy crying. The kind where you can't breathe because you're laughing and sobbing at the same time. I promised her that night that I would give her child everything I never had. I grew up poor, food bank poor, eviction notice poor, wearing shoes with holes in them poor. I swore my kid would never know what that felt like. He would have stability, security, opportunity. So I worked. God, I worked. I took on extra clients. I pursued every certification. I climbed the ladder at the accounting firm until I made partner at 36. We moved to a beautiful house in the suburbs. Marcus went to private school. We took vacations to places I couldn't have dreamed of as a kid. I gave him everything, and he was perfect. Marcus was smart, funny, talented. He played guitar, made honor roll, had a tight group of friends. Jennifer and I were so proud. We were that family, the one other people envied. At least, that's what I told myself. The cracks started small. So small I barely noticed them. Jennifer started spending more time on her phone. She'd be scrolling through Instagram or Facebook constantly, And when I asked what she was looking at, she'd say it was just work stuff or friend updates. She started going to the gym more, which I encouraged. She deserved to take care of herself. She started mentioning this new friend she'd made there, someone named Alex who was helping her train. I didn't think anything of it. Why would I? We'd been married for 18 years. We had a son, a home, a life. We were solid. Marcus was 16, then deep into his social media phase. He had accounts on everything: Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, TikTok. He was always filming something, always editing videos on his laptop. I didn't pay much attention to it. It seemed like what kids did. He told me he wanted to be a content creator, and I smiled and nodded and told him that was great, but maybe he should focus on his college applications too. I was the practical one. Always. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday in late June. I came home from work early, around 7 instead of 9, because I'd finished a client presentation ahead of schedule. I was actually feeling good. I'd stopped and picked up Jennifer's favorite wine and Thai food from the place she loved. I was thinking maybe we could have a nice evening together. Maybe reconnect. I'd been working so much that we'd barely talked beyond logistics for months. I walked into the house and called out for her. No answer. Her car was in the driveway, so I knew she was home. I set the food on the kitchen counter and walked toward the bedroom. The bedroom door was closed. I heard voices inside, low, muffled. I almost knocked. Almost. But something stopped me. Some instinct. Some primal part of my brain that knew before I did. I opened the door quietly. Jennifer was on the bed. She wasn't alone. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds. They didn't even notice me at first. They were too wrapped up in each other. And when Jennifer finally turned her head and saw me, her face went completely white. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just stood there, the wine bottle still in my hand, and said her name. Just once. Jennifer. She scrambled to cover herself. The man, Alex, I assumed, grabbed his clothes and started stammering apologies. I didn't even look at him. I just looked at my wife, this woman I'd spent 20 years loving, and I couldn't recognize her. I walked out. I left the house and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove for hours, my mind completely blank, until I ended up at a hotel off the highway. I checked in and sat on the edge of the bed in that sterile room, and that's when I finally broke down. She called me 37 times that night. I didn't answer once. I thought that was the worst betrayal I would ever experience. I was wrong. The next 3 weeks were a blur of lawyers, mediators, and impossible conversations. Jennifer swore it was a mistake, that it had only happened once, that she still loved me. I didn't believe her. I couldn't. Every time I looked at her, all I saw was that image burned into my brain. Marcus was devastated. He'd come home from friends' house the day after I left to find his mother crying and his father gone. Jennifer told him we were having problems. I told him the truth, not the graphic details, but enough. I told him his mother had cheated on me and that I was filing for divorce. I watched my son's heart break in real time. He aged years in that conversation. His face crumpled, and he asked me if there was any way to fix it. I told him no. Some things, once broken, couldn't be repaired. He chose to live with me. That was important to me, maybe too important. It felt like validation, like at least one person in my family still chose me. We moved into a smaller house closer to my office. I threw myself back into work because it was the only thing that made sense, the only place where I still had control. Marcus went back to school, but he changed. He became quieter, more withdrawn. He spent hours in his room, and when I asked if he was okay, he'd say he was fine. He was just processing things. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. That's when Sarah came into my life. I met her at a work conference in September, just 3 months after the divorce papers were filed. She was a financial consultant, smart and confident, with this incredible energy that drew people in. We started talking at a networking event, and before I knew it, we'd been at the hotel bar for 4 hours, just talking. About work, about life, about everything. She was 28, 19 years younger than me. I knew how it looked. Believe me, I knew. But I didn't care. For the first time in months, I felt alive. I felt wanted. Sarah didn't know the broken version of me. She only saw the successful partner, the guy who had his life together. We started dating. I told Marcus about her after a month. He was polite, but distant when I introduced them. He shook her hand, made small talk, then excused himself to his room. I told myself he just needed time to adjust. By November, Sarah had started staying over at the house on weekends. She was great. She'd cook breakfast, try to engage Marcus in conversation, ask about his music and his school. He was civil but cold. I pulled him aside one night and asked him what was going on. He told me he thought I was moving too fast, that it felt disrespectful to Mom, that Sarah was practically his age, and it was weird. I got defensive. I told him I deserved to be happy, that his mother had destroyed our marriage, not me. I told him I'd spent 20 years being the responsible one, the provider, and I was allowed to live my life now. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in his eyes, something I couldn't read. Then he just said, "Okay, Dad," and went back to his room. Things escalated in December. Sarah and I had been dating for 3 months. She mentioned she was having trouble with her student loans, that the interest was crushing her, and she didn't know how she'd ever pay them off. I offered to help. It was $20,000, not a small amount, but manageable for me. I told her to consider it an early Christmas gift, a way to give her a fresh start. She cried and thanked me. She told me I was the most generous man she'd ever met. I didn't tell Marcus about the money. I knew he'd judge me for it, and I didn't want to hear it. But somehow he found out. I still don't know how. Maybe he saw the bank statement I'd left on my desk. Maybe he overheard a phone call. But 2 days before Christmas, he confronted me. He asked me point blank if I'd given Sarah money. I admitted I had. He asked how much. I told him it wasn't his business. He laughed, this bitter, angry laugh I'd never heard from him before, and said it absolutely was his business. He told me that while I was throwing money at my girlfriend, Mom was struggling to pay rent on her apartment. That she'd asked him not to tell me because she didn't want to seem desperate, but she'd been eating ramen for dinner because she couldn't afford groceries after paying her bills. That she'd given up everything in the divorce, the house, the savings, most of the assets, because she felt too guilty to fight for them. I told him that wasn't my problem, that his mother had made her choices and had to live with the consequences. Marcus looked at me like I was a stranger. He said, "You used to be my hero, Dad. I don't even recognize you anymore." Then he walked away. I should have paid attention to that moment. I should have realized what was coming. 3 days after Christmas, I woke up to 147 text messages. I was at Sarah's apartment. We'd spent the night there, and I turned my phone off because I wanted a break from everything. When I turned it back on at 9 in the morning, it started buzzing like it was possessed. Messages from coworkers, from old college friends I hadn't spoken to in years, from my brother in Colorado, from my own mother, all of them saying some version of the same thing. Is this real? What happened? I can't believe this. You need to see this. My hand was shaking as I opened the first link someone had sent me. It was a TikTok video, posted by Marcus. The video opened on his face. He looked exhausted, his eyes red like he'd been crying. He was in his room, sitting on his bed, his guitar visible in the background. And he started talking. He told his followers, all 38,000 of them, about our family. He told them about Jennifer's affair, about the divorce, about me moving on with Sarah. He told them about the money I'd given her. And then he said the thing that made the video go nuclear. He told them that while I was spending thousands of dollars on a woman I'd known for 3 months, I'd refused to help pay for his mother's cancer treatment. Cancer treatment. I stared at the screen. I watched the view count climbing. I read the comments flooding in. Thousands of them, all calling me a monster, a deadbeat, the worst father alive. And I realized with absolute horror that I had no idea what he was talking about, that I called Jennifer immediately. She answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting. I asked her if it was true, if she had cancer. There was a long silence. Then she said yes. She'd found a lump 2 months ago. She'd had it biopsied. It was malignant. Stage 2 breast cancer. She started chemotherapy 3 weeks ago, right before Christmas. I asked her why she hadn't told me. She said she didn't want to burden me, that I'd made it clear she wasn't my responsibility anymore, that Marcus had begged her to let him tell me, but she'd refused because she knew I'd only help out of guilt, not love, and she couldn't stand the thought of that. I asked her how much the treatment cost, how much she needed. She told me the insurance covered some of it, but she was still looking at about $50,000 out of pocket, money she didn't have. She'd been trying to figure out payment plans, maybe take out a loan. $50,000. I just dropped $20,000 on Sarah without blinking. I hung up and immediately tried to call Marcus. He didn't answer. I called 10 times. Nothing. WY noon. The video had 2 million views. By evening, it was at 8 million. And I was about to discover that my son's betrayal went so much deeper than I ever imagined. The video kept spreading. It jumped from TikTok to Twitter to Reddit to Facebook. News outlets picked it up. I saw headlines. Son exposes father's cruelty in viral video. Dad spends thousands on girlfriend while ex-wife battles cancer. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. My firm's HR department called me in for an emergency meeting. They told me I was being placed on administrative leave while they assessed the situation. Translation: they were trying to figure out if I was toxic enough to fire. Sarah called me crying, saying people were finding her Instagram and sending her death threats. She said she didn't know I'd refused to help Jennifer. She asked me if it was true. I told her it wasn't. Not the way Marcus made it sound. I told her I didn't know about the cancer, that if I had known, I would have helped. She asked me if that was really true, if I would have. I realized I didn't have an answer. She broke up with me that night, over text. I spent the next week in my house, alone, watching my life disintegrate. I lost my job, not officially fired, but they made it clear I should resign. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors I'd known for years looked away when they saw me. And Marcus still wouldn't answer my calls. I drove to Jennifer's apartment on New Year's Eve. I needed to see her, to explain, to figure out how to fix this. She answered the door wearing a headscarf. She'd lost her hair. I almost didn't recognize her. She was so thin, so pale. She looked at me with this mixture of sadness and exhaustion and said, "What do you want, David?" I told her I wanted to help, that I'd pay for everything. The treatment, her rent, whatever she needed. She asked me why. Why now? I told her because it was the right thing to do. Because she was Marcus's mother. Because I never wanted this to happen. She shook her head slowly and said, "No. You're doing this because 17 million people are watching. You're doing this because you got caught." And that's when I realized she was right. I finally got Marcus on the phone 2 days into the new year. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near our old house. I got there early and sat in the corner, rehearsing what I was going to say. I was going to tell him I understood why he was angry, that I was going to make things right with his mother, that we could rebuild our relationship. When he walked in, he looked older, harder. He sat down across from me and didn't say hello. I started to apologize. I told him I didn't know about his mother's cancer, that if I had known, everything would have been different. I told him I understood he was trying to protect her, but posting that video had destroyed my life. He cut me off. He said, "I know you didn't know about Mom's cancer." I stared at him. "What?" He leaned forward, his voice calm and cold. "I never told you. She never told you. I made sure of it." My brain couldn't process what I was hearing. "You set me up?" He nodded. "I needed people to understand what kind of person you'd become. And they wouldn't have cared if I just said you were dating someone younger or spending money on her. People do that all the time. But refusing to help your ex-wife with cancer while you spoil your girlfriend? That's a villain origin story." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. "So you lied? You made me look like a monster on purpose?" "I didn't lie," he said. "Everything in that video was true. You did refuse to help Mom. You just didn't know she needed help because you never bothered to ask. You were so wrapped up in your new life that you forgot we existed. That's not fair, isn't it?" His voice cracked. "Dad, when was the last time you asked me how I was doing? Like really asked, not just as a formality before you went back to work or texting Sarah. When was the last time you asked Mom if she needed anything after you kicked her out of the house you built together?" I opened my mouth, but couldn't find words. Marcus continued, "I watched you become someone I didn't recognize. You always said family came first, but the second mom made a mistake, one mistake in 20 years. You threw her away. You threw us both away. And then you replaced her in 3 months. She cheated on me," I said weakly, "and you never forgave her. You never even tried. You just decided you were the victim and everyone else could go to hell." He stood up. "I don't regret posting that video. You needed to see yourself through everyone else's eyes. You needed to understand what you'd become." He walked out of the coffee shop, and I sat there, frozen, as the truth of his words settled over me like concrete. But the story doesn't end there. Because 2 weeks later, I found out the one thing Marcus hadn't told me. The one thing that changed everything again, that I spent the next 2 weeks in a fog. I paid for Jennifer's treatment. All of it. I sent her money for rent and groceries. I sent Marcus money too, even though he sent it back. I stayed in my house alone, going over every conversation, every moment, trying to figure out where I'd gone so wrong. Then my mother called. She was the only person who'd stood by me through everything. She called me every day since the video went viral, telling me it would blow over, that people would forget. She was wrong, but I appreciated the effort. This call was different. Her voice was tight, worried. She said, "David, I need to tell you something." I debated whether I should, but you deserve to know. My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "It's about Marcus. About the video." "Mom, I know. He set me up. He admitted it." "No, honey, it's more than that." She took a deep breath. "I talked to your Aunt Linda yesterday. She's friends with Jennifer's sister on Facebook. And Jennifer's sister posted something a few months ago, before the cancer diagnosis." "What did she post?" "A picture of Jennifer and Marcus at dinner. The caption said they were celebrating because Marcus had gotten accepted into a content creator program, some kind of accelerator for influencers. But to get in, you need a viral hit. You need to prove you can generate millions of views." The words hit me like ice water. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying Marcus needed a viral video to get into that program. And he knew exactly what kind of story would blow up." I couldn't breathe. I asked her to send me the screenshot. She did. I stared at it for an hour. Marcus smiling at the camera, Jennifer beside him, both of them happy. The date stamp was from November, weeks before the cancer diagnosis, right around the time I'd started dating Sarah. I opened TikTok and found Marcus's account. The video about me was pinned at the top. 17 million views. But it wasn't his only video. I scrolled down. There were dozens of others. Videos about our family drama, about the divorce, about his toxic father. Each one had hundreds of thousands of views. And at the end of each video, there was a link. Join my Patreon for exclusive updates on my family situation. I clicked the link. He had 12,000 subscribers, each paying $5 a month, $60,000 a month. For monetizing our family's destruction, that I drove to Jennifer's apartment. I didn't call first. I just showed up and knocked on the door. Marcus answered. His face went pale when he saw me. I asked him if Jennifer was home. He said she was resting. I told him I needed to talk to him. Now, we sat in her living room, and I showed him my phone. I showed him the screenshots, the Patreon, the dates. "You used her cancer," I said. "You used your mother's cancer to make me the villain in your viral video. That's not. Don't lie to me anymore, Marcus. Please." My voice broke. "I know I messed up. I know I wasn't there for you or your mother the way I should have been. But you turned our family into content. You made money off of destroying me." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You destroyed yourself, Dad. I just showed people who you really were. By lying. By making it seem like I knew about the cancer and refused to help. I didn't lie. I said you refused to help Mom. You did. The cancer was just context. It was manipulation. And you knew exactly what you were doing." I stood up. "How much of it was real, Marcus? Any of it? Or was this whole thing just a performance for your followers?" His jaw tightened. "You want to know what's real? I'll tell you what's real. I spent my entire childhood watching you work yourself to death. You missed every concert, every game, every important moment because you were too busy providing. And I told myself that was okay because you were doing it for us. But then Mom made one mistake and you abandoned her. And then you met Sarah and suddenly you had time. You had energy. You had money to spend on trips and gifts and dinners. And I realized you didn't work all those years because you had to. You worked because it was easier than being present. It was easier than being a husband and a father." His words cut deeper than anything in the video. "So yeah, I used the situation. I turned it into content. Because you know what? This is what I'm good at. This is my career. And unlike you, I don't have to sacrifice my relationships to succeed at it. I could do both." "You sacrificed me," I said quietly. "You threw me to the wolves for views and subscribers." "No, Dad. You threw yourself to the wolves. I just filmed it." I left Jennifer's apartment and drove aimlessly for hours. I ended up at the house where Marcus grew up, the one Jennifer and I had bought when he was 3. Someone else lived there now, but I sat in the car across the street and stared at it. I thought about all the nights I'd come home late to that house, all the bedtime stories I'd missed, the homework help I'd delegated to Jennifer, the mornings I'd left before Marcus woke up. I thought about how proud I'd been of providing for them, how I'd measured my worth as a father in the size of the house and the quality of the school and the balance in the savings account. And I realized Marcus was right. I'd been absent long before the divorce. I made myself the hero of a story where I was actually just gone. The affair had hurt. The divorce had hurt. But the real betrayal, the one I'd refused to see, was my own. I betrayed my family years ago by choosing work over presence, money over time, providing over connecting. Marcus's video hadn't destroyed my life. It had just shown everyone what my family had known for years. I was really good at playing the role of devoted father and husband, but terrible at actually being one dot. And that's when I made the decision that would either save me or finish destroying me completely, that I called Marcus the next day. I told him I wanted to make a video. He was skeptical. He thought I wanted to do some kind of response video to defend myself. I told him no. I wanted to tell my side of the story, but not the way he thought. I wanted to tell the truth. We filmed it in his room, the same spot where he'd recorded the original video. I sat on his bed, looked at the camera, and I started talking. I talked about my childhood, about growing up poor and scared and determined to never put my family through that. I talked about how I'd let that fear consume me, how I'd turned providing into an identity and then used it as an excuse to be absent. I talked about the affair, about how much it hurt, but also about how I'd refused to fight for my marriage. How I'd given up on 20 years without even trying. I talked about Sarah, about how I'd been so desperate to feel wanted again that I'd thrown money and attention at someone I barely knew while ignoring the people who'd always been there. And I talked about the video, about how watching myself through everyone else's eyes had forced me to see what I'd become. I didn't excuse myself. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I just told the truth. Marcus posted the video on his channel. It got 4 million views in the first day. The response was complicated. Some people said I was trying to manipulate my way back into sympathy. Others said it was too little, too late. But some people, not as many, but some, said they respected the honesty. That they'd been where I was and understood. It didn't undo the damage. It didn't get my job back or fix my relationship with Marcus overnight. But it was a start. That was 3 months ago. Jennifer finished her treatment last week. The doctors say she's in remission. I paid for all of it, and I'll keep paying for whatever she needs. Marcus and I talk now. Not every day, but regularly. We're rebuilding slowly. He's doing well with his content. He got into that program, and he's making real money from it. I'm proud of him, even though I hate how he got there. I found a new job, smaller firm, less prestige, less money. But I leave at 5 every day. I have dinner with my mother twice a week. I'm in therapy, trying to figure out who I am when I'm not working, and I'm learning to sit with the discomfort of knowing that my son was right about me, that I was the villain in my own story. The video is still out there. 17 million views and counting. It'll probably never go away. My name is permanently attached to it, and there will always be people who only know me as that dad from TikTok. But here's what I've learned. The thing about being exposed is that there's nowhere left to hide. No more pretending, no more crafting the perfect image. Everyone sees you exactly as you are, flawed, broken, human. And maybe that's the point. Marcus didn't destroy me with that video. He showed me what I'd already done to myself. He forced me to look in the mirror and see the truth I'd been avoiding for years. I'll never forget what he did. I'll never forget the humiliation, the loss, the pain of having 17 million strangers dissect my failures. But I also won't forget the gift buried inside that betrayal, the chance to finally, actually change. My son exposed me on TikTok, and as much as I hate to admit it, I needed to be exposed. Because the person I was before that video, he was already gone. He'd been dying for years, suffocated under the weight of his own illusions. The person I'm becoming now, he's real. Flawed and trying and real. And maybe just maybe, that's worth 17 million views. If you're listening to this and you see yourself in my story, if you're working too much, if you're choosing money over presence, if you're so busy providing that you've forgotten to actually be there, please don't wait for your own viral video to wake you up. Your family doesn't need your money as much as they need you. I learned that the hardest way possible. Don't make the same mistake. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next live story. With love and respect.